Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hope you liked those silly snipes I had at the start. Those were fun. Just wanted to do this quick video because, there's been some changes in the Crucible with special ammo and primary usage is obviously going up, and I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of think about, the best pairings for primaries with sniper rifles. Of course, if you watched my last video, I kind of think sniper rifles are on the decline, but that's not stopping me from using them. It's still my favorite special to use. Just really like clicking domes. But yeah, like I mentioned, there's less special ammo, so that essentially means there's less shotguns running around. So that has opened up, other primaries being more viable, more longer range primaries, because you're not constantly having to sidearm or submachine gun, that ape running right at you. So let's take a look at these. Obviously the traditional practice is using the submachine guns and sidearms, so let's just start there because that's probably what everyone's used to. It's still extremely strong choice, something you should always consider, and we'll talk about why in different kinds of game modes. But since I'm on controller, I prefer weapons like Drang and Traveler's Chosen. I just think that archetype, that adaptive archetype, is extremely competitive. It has a great TTK, and it just feels best, especially those sidearms have really great range. On controller, it feels really sticky, extremely easy to get the optimal TTK. And then, Trespasser, it's hard to get away from Trespasser. I mean, it's so easy to chain kills with that special perk of, you get a kill, you reload, and then you get the super burst. And the super burst, it can just really mess people up. So that's another one of my favorites. People like all sorts of sidearms, man. Like, I know True Vanguard, he likes lightweights. I can never get into those. I mean, people are always trying to tell me to use them, but whatever, they're not my bag. And just another buff that a lot of people don't know about is sidearms actually have the smallest penalty for moving while aiming down sights. So while you're strafing and aiming down sights, you're going to be moving a lot faster than someone who has a pulse rifle or an auto rifle. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is there's that sweet new sidearm coming out with Final Shape, and it kind of looks like Vestian Dynasty, and Vestian Dynasty is a precision archetype if I'm not mistaken. I kind of hope this one's an adaptive, we'll see, but man, I'm just really hoping that it feels good in PvP, because I love the look of that. I like that bigger sidearm. Thing's thick. But moving on to submachine guns, I think this is more of an M&K choice. Obviously, controller players can still use them. They still slap, there's still a ton of great options, and they still have really good perks. But, mouse players, they're going to be able to just kind of use it a little further than the controller players. It's a reticle friction thing where once that reticle friction drops off for a controller, it just is so difficult to, land those headshots, and the headshots in this sandbox with the changes are more important than ever. So, but paired with the sniper, you want to go for more range. More range the better. You can always get those cleanup kills, like 20 meters out. If you just bodied them with a sniper, it's nice to be able to just swap and clean them up. Good ones for that. Shire's Wrath has a fat range bar. That's a good one. And even though it's a little more difficult to handle, I really like the Huckleberry. I mean, call me a cowboy, whatever, but man, that thing is just a good looking gun, that one. Other good ones, obviously Unending Tempest from the Crucible. That one's very popular with Target Lock, has a great TTK, a little more forgiving, so that one's always one that you should be looking out for. And yeah, I don't think nothing else is coming to mind. I mean, I'm sure there's more. Of course, there's Teraba. Teraba's phenomenal. Immortal still hanging around. I'm sure they'll probably buff those again. For some reason, Bungie likes their submachine guns, and everyone else does too. They're great guns. But like I mentioned at the start, special and shotguns are becoming not as commonplace, so that's opening up other options. So let's let's kind of go with probably the strongest choice, and one that was obviously still used a lot and is still used a ton at hand cannons. There's just a ton of options for these, and really, really good options, really competitive options. You know, just a shout out to back in the day when Last Word was king. You know, it's a shell of its former self, but it's something to keep an eye on. If they ever do buff Last Word, it could easily skyrocket to be the best choice, you know, bar none, best choice of any primary weapon to pair with a sniper, because you can just tag people from, you know, 25-30 meters out, you know, get those kills. You can tag people from right up close and sidearm distance, so that one's one to keep an eye on. Of course, you know, like I mentioned, dozens of good options here. I really like the Rose personally. I like the Cantata a lot. And the new Luna's Howl. I mean, Luna's Howl is probably the easiest to use on controller. I'm a controller player, so that makes sense. You can just easily get those consecutive headshots. That makes it really easy. But just overall, hand cannons are amazing choices for mid-size maps, and that's what the majority of the maps are. So it makes sense why those, you know, are going to compete the best. If every map was about 10 meters longer and had longer lanes, then we'd be using something else. But it's also just worth mentioning that hand cannons can scrap up close. I mean, if you know, put a couple body shots into them and then melee, chances are you're going to get the kill. So just kind of getting that muscle memory down, you can be a menace up close too. And hand cannons are definitely the most powerful option when you're in a good fire team. And by that I mean a fire team that's good at team shooting. If you can be in a good team shooting fire team, you don't even have to get close, because no one's going to get close enough to you. They're all just probably going to die. I roll solo and trials a lot, so it's more difficult for me. I still try and stick with it, but you know, the blueberries aren't always team shooting, but who can blame them? And now we're probably going to start getting into the options that people aren't thinking of. You know, let's start with auto rifles. I think they're slowly becoming meta. I mean, look at the usage in trials last week. Summoner got used a ton. I mean, it's, you know, I think it was in the top 5 most used weapons. I was just in 6s the other day, and I was using Sorrow's Verse, which is like a very off-meta pick, and someone accused me of cheating, which was hilarious, but I was using like a tap-the-trigger snapshot roll that I just wanted to try out, and yeah, I mean, it was popping off, but I just kind of feel like autos are usually slept on. There's just a lot of great picks that no one's using. Of course, Suros Regime, someone else. I got some hate mail for using that in 3v3 in competitive, and yeah, I mean, try them out, especially the sandbox. I think you'll be surprised if you haven't been using them. It's yeah, they're really good. I mean, up close, you know, they're obviously, in my opinion, easier to use in close quarters, easier than hand cannons. And that's because they're forgiving. You know, you miss a couple shots, it's not a big deal, but if you miss a couple hand cannon shots, you probably are dead. Other popular choices, I mentioned the Summoner, but of course Prosecutor, that's been kind of tearing up the Crucible. The Omet, that's a good one, and one that I personally like that I think is extremely underrated is Sweet Sorrow. I think if you craft it and get a great roll on it, it's TTK, you know, the rapid fires have a really good TTK, it's just about landing those shots, and I don't think that's a hard thing to do with Sweet Sorrow. Sorry if I'm speaking a little fast for this video, I just know it's going to be long, so I don't want to like drag it out at all, so that's why I'm speaking a little faster. But let's move on to pulse rifles. I think, you know, with the changes, they're becoming more and more viable. Even though they're like a longer range distance weapon, I still think that there are some that you can, you know, definitely tear up with in close quarters. You know, I'm thinking like BXR, of course it has the special frame where you can have really accurate hip firing. But you know, even just ones where you're not hip firing, like if you've seen my other videos on Blast Furnace, of course you know already that I'm a big fan, but yeah, I just feel like, you know, ones like Blast Furnace, they have that really tight grouping on your bursts. I think it, you know, it still feels good even at like 5 meters away. It's easy to get 2 taps, so if you haven't tried those, definitely try them out. And And, you know, scouts, I kind of think you're throwing if you're going for scouts. Really the only one you should be using with a sniper is maybe DMT, and you kind of just have to be, you know, on with your hip firing. In my opinion, you know, if you're going to use that the whole time. Of course, you know, if like 6s and you just want to sit in the back, like you can use Jade Rabbit or whatever with a sniper. But, you know, if you want to be actually going on like big sprees and maneuvering the map really well, I think DMT is kind of your only option for those. The other Tex aggressives, they just don't have the hip fire that DMT does. Until they buff those, I would just kind of say stay away if you're trying to hip fire those. And just some notes overall, just to wind down the video. I think that sidearms and submachine guns, those are still going to be your most competitive play, especially if you're going in solo to like competitive or trials. That's probably still the one you should be using if you're wanting to snipe, just because you gotta lock down zones most of the time, especially in trials obviously. And when you're closing a zone, you're gonna be in 10 meters, 15 meters, and the other team's definitely gonna have shotguns, they're definitely gonna be using submachine guns or whatever, and it's just if you're rolling in there with a pulse rifle, you're at a massive disadvantage. So I still think that, of course, those are going to be, you know, the strongest picks, just kind of depending on the game type. But, you know, longer range weapons, obviously the whole point of this video is just me saying that those are viable now. Like, in the sandbox, you can still use them. But it's not like you should still be cocky. Like, you should still play them at their effective ranges, or at least try to. Really only using them up close when you have to. You know, being a dad in the back and going on sprees, that's always going to feel better than being aggressive and dying all the time. So that's it for this video. I really appreciate y'all stopping by and watching. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. Let me know what you think. And yeah, peace.